Kia ora, welcome to Cinema in Context as we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name's Jeremy Downing.
I'm Sarah Watt.
My name is William Chen.
And I'm Max Tarrant.
And today we're talking about two films. We're talking about Zootopia, which came out this year, and The Lion King, which came out back in 1994. Which is funny, I realise that Once a Warriors also came out in 1994, so we seem to be on a bit of a trend with discussing films that came out 22 years apart. The connection here is Disney Animation Studios. They're both films that deal with a wide array of anthropomorphic animals, animals that act like humans, walking on 2 feet and various things.
Okay, let's begin. One of the highlights of Zootopia for me was just how good the world building was, especially how we get to see the world through the main character's eyes, main character being Judy Hopps, who's a little bunny from the sticks. And then seeing just the expanse of the world and the different biomes, it was really, really fantastic. And all of the countless man-hours of design work that went into each and every frame was really, really amazing to me.
I agree. I took a 4-year-old to see it, and it was her second only ever cinema experience, the first having apparently gone appallingly, and she had to leave in terror. And I had anticipated, exactly as you say, that in that train ride that Judy takes in through Zootopia, I was looking forward to that, and sure enough, this 4-year-old audibly, wow, as the scene unfolded, and I thought, that's exactly the kind of response I would have had if I were talking in the middle of a movie. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that was exactly the point I was going to come up with as well. The world building, the city is the most amazing technical aspect of this film, I think. And it's only really since Big Hero 6 that I think we've had the kind of capabilities technically with the animation to build these cities that are so immersive. And I just found that really amazing. Also, another scene that I found kind of interesting along similar lines in terms of technical capacity was the last scene. Not hugely important that it's in a, just as the credits come up, it's in a big kind of rave.
Like in an arena, at a concert?
Yes, a big club or something like that. And there's just thousands of people in there. And I thought to myself that the kind of point of comparison recent to this would be probably like Lord of the Rings, where they have the battle scenes and you've got hundreds of thousands of people battling, and it looks kind of quite terrible. And I remember it being quite a big deal at the time that they'd created thousands of people that were fighting. And in this, finally, when we get to Zootopia, I feel like we have the capacity technically to produce that scene properly, like with thousands of people, and make it look good.
Yeah, I agree. I also had the world building as my technical moment, because I'm the same. I wanted to go there. I really wanted to go to Zootopia, and it reminded me of the same feeling I had when I watched the start of Jurassic World last year, and it was last year. And I thought, wow, that's such a cool park. I really want to go there. And so I loved hearing that about the 4-year-old. 4-year-old girl.
Part of the joy of the worlds that they'd built in Zootopia, particularly, what do they call it, Precinct 1 though, the central city of course, is when the train pulls up and there's the large door for the giraffe and there's the medium-sized door for the hippo and there's the little door for the little creatures coming out, which of course will go right over the heads of the 4-year-olds in the audience. But there's something enormously satisfying about the level of detail that the creators of Zootopia, the film and the city, went to create this world that seemed really plausible and inclusive and all that. And I think there was so much delight to be had from that, wasn't there?
A lot of jokes, a lot of gags. Yeah. I was laughing the whole time with a friend of mine, and just we were spotting things separately. So I would laugh, and a couple of people might have laughed, and then she would laugh, and so there was a lot of visual gags, things like that, like the lemmings coming out and
coming out
each
and
other.
having their ice blocks. For me, it's so this is a perfect segue, because for me the technical aspect, and this is where the English teacher comes out, wasn't so much the technological side of things, but if you look at the I guess in English terms we would agree that the ideas or the construction of the narrative and whatnot still counts as a technical aspect. Is this whole thing that I'm captivated by called double address. And you've just alluded to it already, Jeremy, this notion that all children's books and all films nowadays have this sort of double layer to them, like Shakespeare was doing 400 or so years ago, whereby the adult audience gets to acknowledge the visual gags, like the particular scene where one of the cops are sent off to go undercover, and you see the wolf just pull the sheep's clothing costume over him, and the brilliance of nobody having to say, "Oh, there's a wolf in sheep's clothing," but that the adults in the audience who are familiar with such sort of idioms will notice that and have a chuckle. And the wonderful scene of the police captain saying, "I think it's important that we acknowledge the elephant in the room," and suddenly pans over to this big elephant, and they go, "Happy birthday, Agnes," or whatever the elephant's name is, So, and yet the little kids don't need to be getting that, because there's so much else there for them. As we say, reading the lines, whereas the reading between the lines or beyond the lines for the adults was so satisfying, very slow people working in government departments and all that sort of thing. Whereas for kids, it's a creature speaking very, very slowly, and that's funny too, but in its separate way. So for me, this double address thing, which apparently is imperative in all sort of children's literature, and you can understand if it's the parents who are paying to go to the bloomin' movies, then there's got to be something in it for the older crowd, doesn't there? Then that was the technical aspect for me that I thought was just brilliant in Zootopia, and Big Hero 6, actually, as you say.
On that note, I absolutely agree with you that double address is so satisfying. And when it's done in a way that's true to the story and it's sincere to what's actually happening in the story, it works really well. I guess I did have one criticism of the film, and it's a small one, but it's the parody that was in the film of The Godfather. I thought it was really cheap.
Just going to mention that.
It was really cheap, and it's one of the reasons why
cheap and too obvious. You mean, like?
Yeah. I think it's a cheap trick. I think it's really easy to do parody, and Pixar don't do it. And I always love that when you look at a Pixar film compared to, say, a DreamWorks animation film, which the first one being Shrek, or the first computer-generated one being Shrek, which that whole film was about parody, which it worked.
Yes.
But then every subsequent DreamWorks picture always has that kind of parody, pop culture references,
the in-jokes.
The in-jokes, and I thought Zootopia, it didn't rely on that, but there was that Godfather parody that I was like, oh, really? I've seen this 100 times, and it's not. I don't find it that funny. I was already laughing when I saw the design of the house, because I got straight away that it was a Godfather. Yeah. But then they really went right on the nose.
They did, yeah. And of course that goes over the heads of the 4-year-old that I was with, because she hasn't, thankfully, yet seen The Godfather, although it's in her future. But
that's a good point. That for the double address, it kind of fails on both parts, because it goes over the heads of the young people, but for the older people, it's too simple. So it's kind of not quite on either of those lines.
Yeah, it is quite hard to get a good joke that works on every level. I was also going to bring up the Godfather thing. For me, I don't mind it that much, because it was funny because they had funny voices, and the tiny little wedding and how they play with scale and everything.
Yeah. And she had a New York kind of accent.
Yes,
and the dad
even
sounded
Joyzy,
like Marlon Brando, So it was nice. But
that really stuck out like a sore thumb. That, and also later on there's a joke with bootleg DVDs, which just for me landed with a thud.
Oh, really?
My goodness. That felt like something straight out of a DreamWorks movie.
Right.
Or like a really bad Mel Brooks joke.
Right.
Yeah.
It was fleeting, though. I almost wanted... you want to remember what it was?
Yes.
So one of the... I don't remember what kind of animal, but obviously a predator, because they were evil. It was a weasel. Is selling knockoff... bootleg DVDs.
And they're all Disney animation.
They're Disney animations, but instead of Tangled, there's Wrangled. And Wreck-It Ralph
was Wreck-It Rhino.
Right, that's right. And so it's
Big Hero Pig? No, Big Hero Pig, was it?
And it's a very quick visual gag. It's just a tiny little pan across his table of DVDs. And I actually, because I saw Zootopia a second time, and I was like, I want to go back. I want to capture what all of those were. But it was, it was fleeting. And but that's interesting that for you, William, it fell with a thud. As you say.
Why do you think it fell with a thud?
It felt like, and this is something I'll bring up in part 3 about the context of the movie. It felt really contemporary. That I think the majority of Disney movies in their animated canon, they stand by themselves regardless of the decade you watch them.
Right.
And for me, Zootopia was kind of odd duck. Like
You mean it's so now
Yes,
that
it is so
in 22
2016.
years' time, it'll feel horribly dated?
Yeah.
Right.
So with everyone on their cell phones all
Sure.
the time, and
the
and
carrot icon on the back of the
yes,
iPhone
that's right.
and everything. But you see, I love that. And I loved all of those contemporary well, they're not throwbacks, are they? Because they're throwing back to right now. But that's so interesting. Yeah, and when we get on to talking about Lion King, see, 22 years on, Lion King doesn't work for me at all.
Really?
We'll get to that, not
Yeah.
at all on any level. But you make such a good point, William, about will we even be bothering to watch Zootopia in 22 years' time?
It feels like perhaps the reason that it has so much contemporary influence or so many contemporary little nuggets is probably because the issue of the film is so to this moment.
Yes.
So kind of
I agree.
by the minute we're drawing exactly on what's going on politically in this kind of last couple of years. And so I feel like that might be one of the reasons. But it doesn't excuse it. But
Well, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It's just a little weird for Disney to be doing this when, 50 movies in, maybe there's just a handful, and maybe The Jungle Book is a little dated, and maybe 101 Dalmatians.
Yeah.
But, you really have to look through their catalogue to see, okay, this is much more contemporary than timeless. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but just
But an interesting
odd one
point.
out.
Yeah, I
it's
wonder
maybe a
what's...
strange strategic decision. From
That's
Disney.
right. I wonder what's influencing them, therefore. Because, I mean, back in the day, Disney was probably... They would have been the monopoly, wouldn't they?
Oh, yeah.
Or the oligopoly. What's the one for there's only one of them anyway? That was it. And so, as you say, they're up against Pixar and DreamWorks, who are very, very...
Powerhouses.
Absolutely, in terms of competition. So that's very interesting in terms of strategy. And as you say, maybe that comes on to part 3 of our discussion.
Well, Pixar and Disney are both Disney, and they're both managed by the same people.
Oh,
That's a recent thing. It's only happened in the last 10 years. But yeah, so they are very careful. So John Lasseter, who kind of was one of the key people creating Pixar, he is now managing Disney Animation Studios. But they're very careful about being clear about those brands and what each of them stand for.
Yeah.
So
a bit like when Miramax was the independent sort of movie making
Right.
of whoever it was. I don't know.
It was Disney.
Oh, of Disney,
Yeah.
right? Okay, and so even within the big studios, they'd have like their indie arm, wouldn't they, and that sort of thing, and being quite careful to maintain that distinction. So that's interesting, isn't it, to sort of now own one of the competition and to sort of maintain them as competition,
Yes.
but with that sort of big gloved hand over the
Yeah.
top of them that anything could change. Yeah, interesting.
there's a really good book about it, Creativity Inc. Have you read Creativity Inc? Oh, it's one of the best books you will read if you're interested in management, creativity, whatever. But it's Ed Catmull, who him and John Lasseter created Pixar with Steve Jobs, and it goes right back to the 70s from when he pretty much created computer generation.
Wow.
I want to say single-handedly as a pun, because the first thing he did was a single hand that everybody was amazed by. But anyways, he kind of is one of these key people, and he maps the journey, maps the creation of Pixar. And it was really good just reading about how they create a culture of creativity.
Yeah.
And then you get to the last third, I'm thinking, what the heck else is this book going to be?
Yeah.
I mean, it is the acquisition of Pixar by Disney, and then they bring them on to look after Disney Animation Studios, and just how the whole studio is a real mess of bureaucracy, creativity is being squashed, all these artists that came to work at Disney Animation Studios are all just being stepped on, and none of their films are successful.
Right.
And they came in and they kind of reshuffled things around and empowered those creatives to do what they're doing, and that's when you got Bolt and Tangled, and then from there you had like Frozen, Big Hero 6, and now
Wreck-It Ralph.
Wreck-It Ralph
Yeah.
and Zootopia. So,
And what was
yeah.
before then? What were the films that were under the people that were getting stifled?
Home on the Range, Brother Bear.
Yeah.
Just terrible
Oh.
films.
There was some films that were kind of good,
Chicken
but
Little,
they,
yikes. That's
Yeah.
so
Oh,
bad.
I don't know these at all.
but there was like Treasure Planet,
Oh, okay.
Emperor's New Groove at the sort of start of the 2000s,
Atlantis.
which are really cool movies, but they just
Yeah.
did not do any business.
So who was doing Aladdin and Mulan and all those? DreamWorks.
Oh no,
Yeah.
that was Disney.
That was Disney.
Yeah.
Oh.
DreamWorks came around with Prince of Egypt in, I want to say 98 or 99.
But Mulan was DreamWorks.
Oh, no,
No,
that was
that's
Disney.
Disney.
Oh.
Yeah. They had their big animation renaissance, starting with Little Mermaid, going all the way through around Tarzan. And then that was the rise of computer animation. And then that was the big deal. Everyone went to see those, and no one went to see hand-drawn stuff anymore. Which is
Well, maybe this is a nice segue, because I would argue that Lion King is the end of the... it's kind of... Well, it's the beginning
peak.
of the end. It's the peak of that Renaissance. It started with Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and then The Lion King. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think it's probably worth mentioning that... I don't know if you want to tell it yourself, but...
What The Lion King feels like now?
No, that you hadn't seen it until this morning.
I know, isn't that weird? Yeah, that's right. And talk about leaving all my swap till the last minute as well. I finished it 20 minutes before I had to come here. So, The Lion King. All I knew about The Lion King was that a couple of years ago in my year 13, 7th form English class, there was the burliest boy in the class, and it was his favourite film of all time, and I was like, oh, that's curious. And obviously I knew some of the songs, the Elton John songs, and I didn't know it was Hans Zimmer's score, but I knew...
I didn't know that either until I just rewatched it the other day.
Right, and it's a fabulous score, actually, but I didn't know that till I watched it today. But what I did know was a portion of the score that uses that ancient, and I mean ancient, like way back to Gregorian chant times. There's a piece of music called the Dies Irae, which goes dun 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 dun, which you realise is in every blimmin' film at the dramatic moment of every film you've ever seen, because of course it's out of copyright by a considerable margin, and anyone can use it. And it happens in one of the key scenes in The Lion King, where the big guy, the dead big lion guy king, right, him dies. See, my lack of enchantment with The Lion King, I'm afraid. Yeah, that's all I knew about it, and I have to say it didn't enchant or engage me today. Now, part of it, obviously, is the animation is never going to look incredible, and I do understand that 22 years ago it was groundbreaking, and obviously that's not going to be the case now, particularly in light of Zootopia. But narratively, it didn't have any of that clever double address business going on. It seemed, I mean, I was searching for anything like that, but it just seemed very straightforward, a revenge story. Apparently it derives from, Hamlet, and like Joseph, is it Joseph in his Technicolor Dreamcoat? The biblical stories of Joseph, and...
I would say a little bit from Macbeth as well.
Right.
Just with the evil king usurping his brother.
Right.
And just running the kingdom into the ground.
So timeless stories.
And it's actually from a whole of African tribal stories, and yeah, timeless. I mean, it's an archetype, isn't it?
Yeah. So timeless, great, and an archetype, great. But as you just said before, Max, the thing with Zootopia is that it's between the lines message is all about the fact that we shouldn't be judging people on their appearances, we shouldn't be making assumptions based on the experiences we've had with different types of people, predator and prey can live together, blah, blah, blah. And there wasn't anything less than superficial, for me at least, and I'm very happy to be proven wrong, in The Lion King. And so it didn't really grab me. And when we get on to talking about the way the anthropomorphization is different, again, for me, Lion King, not remotely interested, whereas Zootopia, I loved the anthropomorphization of those little creatures. So yeah, not impressed. And yet, some people loved the Lion King, didn't they? And they grew up with it, and so tell me about that.
Well, I'm kind of two minds about The Lion King. On one hand, it came at a very seminal time of my childhood where I remember the first time I went to see it. I remember crying when, the bad things happen, just squeeing in joy when the good things happen. And then as, 20-something years on, looking back, I think there's a lot to like about the movie. I agree with you, Jeremy, that it kind of represents the peak of the Disney Renaissance. And then afterwards... I mean, it's followed immediately by Pocahontas, which is a problematic movie on its own.
Yeah.
And then everything else, while good, like I really enjoyed Tarzan and Empress New Groove was fantastic. It just never achieved what the first couple of movies did. So first of all, I want to kind of talk about the animation. I think personally that Lion King is just beautiful. It's hands down just such a good demonstration of what the best you could do with the techniques at that time.
And it was not
produce.
CGI, obviously. It was hand-drawn
a
stuff.
little bit.
It was. They used a system called CAPS, which is, I think, computer animation program system, something like that, or production system, where instead of hand drawing cells and then painting the back of cells using, paint, they could basically transfer pencil sketches immediately onto the computer and then fill the sketches with digital ink.
Right.
And so by doing so, made much easier productions. And you could have complex gradients, you could have a lot of layering of objects,
Yes.
and huge objects which were not achievable just because of how small you could, paint with your hands. And so, for example, the opening of The Lion King, it's just such an amazing technical showcase for all of that. There's this funny faux cinematic change in focus where there's a herd of zebra walking underneath, and then there's the change in the virtual camera, which is all hand-drawn, and then you see the little leafcutter ants like in the foreground, and it's such a cool visual trick that would be impossible even 5 years earlier when they were working on like Basil, the Great Mouse Detective, or Little Mermaid.
Right.
So I think technically it blows me away every time I watch it. The character animation, the special effects, all of that stuff is awesome. Music is pretty good. And then the story just it kind of falls flat.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I totally agree with you, William. Because as a kid, I remember seeing The Lion King. I remember crying when Mufasa dies. I actually cried again when I watched it, and I wasn't like totally sold on the film. But I think remembering back to the pain of that, it was never my favorite Disney film as a kid because I think I was getting a little bit older. Disney films were sort of becoming a little bit childish for me. But yeah, I still remember it very clearly. But beautiful to look at animation, the expanse, the vistas. I really enjoyed. I was really surprised when I was rewatching it how disjointed the story is, and characters that I know and love like Timon and Pumbaa, Rafiki. They don't really come into the film until really late in the game, and it's funny.
And the pacing just goes way out of whack when they do.
Yeah, and then the end of the film I actually thought the film didn't date that badly until the end of the film when he has that confrontation with Scar. It just was like, oh gosh, they really didn't know how to wrap this one up because he's sort of dangling off a cliff, Simba is, and then Scar tells him his little secret, and then he has this newfound strength and he jumps back. It just kind of, and there's a slow motion fight between them.
Well, actually, the slow motion fight was the only thing that was remotely interesting to me because I thought, how would this have seemed back in the day? But of course, that whole, if you think, I know we're getting onto characters a bit later, but if you think about the construction of it, you've got your sidekicks, which certainly in Zootopia, there are no mini funny sidekick type people, but until relatively recently, even in Kung Fu Panda and whatnot, you've got your little sidekicky types, haven't you? Whoever your funniest comedian is at the time. And I was like, oh my goodness, is this Rowan Atkinson's voice? Oh my gosh, remember when he was huge?
It's Whoopi Goldberg, Nathan Lane.
Exactly. And so all these people who are very, as you would say, William, very, very contemporary, very of their time. But in terms of its construction, back in the day, it would have been fine to dangle the protagonist off the cliff and then for him to have this extra whatever sort of burst of... Because that was what we were used to seeing.
It's very romantic, isn't it? It's a very melodramatic story, and it works. I think it works within that. But when you watch it in comparison to Zootopia, which is very contemporary, and I'm of the opinion that rightly so, and it makes it a really nice change from what we used to have.
I think you absolutely nailed, William, the technical aspect of the film. I was looking at it and I was struggling to kind of figure out what I liked technically about it because it's, for me watching it now quite old, and so I'm trying to figure out what was pushing the boundaries at that time. So it's nice to have your knowledge pushing in there. In terms of the film narrative, you've got it's completely so much more romanticized. It's a more mythical story. The animals that we can think of as humans are only doing so to play out an animal narrative, whereas Zootopia is in a city. It is humans. We're right there with them, and that is definitely a change of time. That is, we're dealing with issues now in cartoons that are human issues. Rather than issues that are worldwide.
Or rather than animal issues.
Circle of life, things like that. So, how did I find it going back to it? Yeah, I found it exciting, but it definitely didn't hit me like it did when I was a young child. I think it's just those songs a lot of the time that, for me, they were actually quite a big deal.
I love
At the
that.
time.
Well, no. Now
Yeah.
that's what's held onto it for me.
Oh, wait,
over
you
few
like
years.
the songs
Yeah.
now?
Well, I don't know if I like that. That's too simple a word. But I
hated
have
the
this.
music.
I have this.
Like
really-
I love the soundtrack. The "Can You Feel the Love Tonight?" I got goosebumps because I couldn't help it because it was familiar, and that's what is that biology happening, right? That's
Yeah.
not love, but otherwise those jokey, stupid songs I couldn't have cared less. Couldn't care
Timon
less.
Pumbaa's song is horrible, but
But it's so catchy.
yeah.
Oh, Hakuna Matata.
Yeah.
Hakuna Matata.
He's no worries.
Yeah. You
See, I don't know.
I guess that's like the kid thing, right? Because I love those songs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Elton John. He did all the
Yeah.
songs.
And Tim Rice, don't forget Tim
And
Rice.
Tim Rice. Yes, Tim
Poor
Rice.
Tim Rice.
I
The
had
lyricist.
the good old cassette tape for Lion King, the one in yellow with the tribal markings on it.
Yeah.
And that is worn out, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, to be fair, I still sing all the songs from Annie, the original Annie musical, and they will always be the best songs in the world, and that's the best musical. So, I mean, I completely understand. If I had listened to the Lion King back in '94, or preferably before then, when I was even younger and more gullible, that they might be charming. But now they just feel a bit funny. Sorry, guys.
Well, good. The technical thing another one that I kind of brought out was what they call pathetic fallacy. So where the world reflects how the characters are feeling. And so and I never noticed it as a kid, but you have, when Scar sings his Be Prepared scene, the volcano starts erupting and pushing bits of rock up to lift him, the sort of hierarchy of hyenas and Scar. And then you've also got, I Just Can't Wait to Be King, which I never noticed it as a kid, that the whole colour scheme changes.
Yeah.
And even the designs of the animals change. Everything is super simplified and geometric. And it's incredible, like just to look at and to, wow.
Yeah.
I read that they originally wanted to illustrate the film based on African tribal illustrations, and and they just found that it was not as interesting as doing that more majestic, expansive kind of illustration style. But I wonder if that's the kind of carryover of that they had some ideas for that sequence, and they're like, well, let's put it in this child dream sequence or whatever it is. But yeah, I found that really interesting. And also the other one is at the end of the film where they're having the fight and the lightning strikes and everything sort of bursts into flames, and it's very dramatic. It's that whole kind of romantic, epic feel that this film is, I guess, trying to capture. But yeah, as a kid, you never question those things. Things just happen.
And you absorb the imagery, obviously, as a child, don't you? And it's how it's meant to be. When they're not, our children aren't supposed to be trained to go, oh look, I see it's all gone dark because he's an evil character. That's just part of the absorption.
Yes.
And for those of us, particularly who have become teachers and who are now trained to notice these sorts of things all the time, there's a satisfaction in noticing them all, isn't there? But it brings you out of.
Yeah.
It brings you out of the experience.
Was Lion King? You mentioned before that you didn't think there was any of that nice double address.
There was one thing that I noticed, and this is where Rowan Atkinson's character, what's his name? Zazu is saying, "Oi, you want to watch out for Jeremy Irons. I only know them by their actors' names. You want to watch out for Jeremy Irons, perhaps." And he says something like, "He'd make a nice throw rug." And I thought to myself, now this is interesting, because, as you mentioned before, Max, Lion King is all about animals operating in an animal universe. They're not jumping into little motorised vehicles or wearing clothes or living in a city. And it was the one thing, and I don't know what the term is, it's not anachronistic, but there must be a term for when something is referenced in a world that actually isn't of its world, if you know what I mean.
Right.
They wouldn't know what throw rugs are. It was purely there to connect with a knowing audience, and it was a very quick line, and it wasn't that hilarious. But the point is, it was an interesting choice scripturally. And that was the only one that I noticed, because all the other jokes...
Well, there's Nathan Lane saying, "What do you want me to do? Dress and drag and dance the hula?"
Oh, right.
Which I know that was improvised, and they encouraged, like I know with Robin Williams and Aladdin, most of his part is improvised,
Right.
and there's all of those like Jack Nicholson references, and I think it's the same thing. And I wonder if it is because they have been improvising
Interesting, that Nathan Lane line, because what that reminds me of is, and again, I don't know the character's name, is it Baloo in the Jungle Book? Because even though he doesn't dress in drag, doesn't he dance
he
the
does
hula
dress in drag.
and dance the hula? So maybe it's actually a reference to that rather than the birdcage, which I presume is what you're meaning, because that's the film that Nathan Lane would have been in around the time.
For the first time. I wasn't referring to that, but I was just referring to the fact that he was improvising something. But yeah, quite possibly, maybe he was
This is the
referencing.
thing. Was he referencing the
Oh
content?
no, it came out in '95. I'm pretty sure.
What, the birdcage?
Birdcage. I'm pretty sure it came out the year after.
But maybe he was already
Gonna
filming
check.
it, or who knows? You know,
Yeah.
it is interesting though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So all I noticed, I'm saying, is the throw rug line, which isn't in keeping.
You do
With
know
their
that
universe.
in Hercules. Did you know this? In Hercules, which I love, Hercules, the film. It's another Disney animated film which they made afterwards. There is a scene where a lion that is Scar is a throw rug getting beaten in ancient Greece.
Right.
So they pick that up and then
Right.
have a cameo, have a what do you want to call it? What is a cameo, isn't it? A little cameo in that film.
And that's, you see, I quite enjoy those in-jokes between or within franchises or whatever it might be.
Did you pick up the Let It Go joke in Zootopia?
Yes. The second time I watched it.
Yeah, I did the first time, and the second, I was the only person laughing in the cinema, but I'm used to that. I thought that was great, because that's their own film, of course. See, that's what I wanted to check about the bootleg DVDs. Were they all Disney films?
They
Yes,
were,
and two of
including
them-
the feature films.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was it
Right.
Moana instead of Moana?
Yeah, and then Gigantic, Giraffic, I think
Right,
was the...
and so they wouldn't have dared, obviously, to do someone else's films. They could only send up their own films.
Although
right?
I think that was kind of the joke.
Yeah.
and, oh, look at us. You know,
Yeah.
we're hip.
That's funny.
And promoting. What year did Birdcage come out?
So Nathan Lane was in the Birdcage.
Which,
in
by the way, was
1996.
2 years later.
So, but he was the drag queen companion. But so it could have been a Jungle Book throwback, or it could have been a Birdcage throw forward, or it could just have been Nathan Lane riffing.
On Birdcage, have you seen Birdcage?
Yes.
Oh, it was such a good film. I was blown away by how good it was.
And it's not dated.
Who made that?
That's awesome. Well, it's so of the.
Was
it's
that not Nichols?
Mike
Yeah,
Nichols,
it was
yeah.
Mike
that's
Nichols.
right.
Yeah.
And I read a piece of trivia that Paul Thomas Anderson. There are 2 films that if he starts watching halfway through, he'll watch right till the end.
Yeah.
And Birdcage is one of
There's
them.
one that he can't put down.
And Shining is the other one.
Right.
Yeah,
Robin Williams.
I mean, I really like La Cage aux Folles as well, and I think Birdcage really holds up as well as a remake of that. Like,
Yes.
it's- both of them are really, really good.
Yeah.
And the musical is awesome as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know the musical.
Hey, so there's a difference between Zootopia and the one I don't like, The Lion King. Is I hadn't quite appreciated, should have, that The Lion King is blatantly a musical, and that's very of its era.
Yes.
Because Zootopia has the one song, the Shakira song, which is marvellous as they're driving into Zootopia, and it's marvellous throughout the film, and it's marvellous in the closing credits. But at least there's only the one that you need to have on your brain. So that must be a change in focus or strategy, if you will. How?
Well, it's coming back, isn't it, with Frozen? And I think Moana is a musical.
Oh, is it?
I don't know.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
But Frozen,
Were there heaps of songs in Frozen? I can only think of that one damn song. But are there heaps?
There were a
5.
couple.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
okay.
Some weren't so good, some were pretty good.
Yeah.
I wasn't a huge fan of Frozen. I could appreciate what it was doing,
Yeah.
particularly with female representation. But I actually saw in that Sarah, you posted that grid of the Disney animation films and how much of the dialogue is given to men. And Frozen was all right on that.
What do you mean? Still had
It was still about
quite a lot of male dialogue.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
But maybe
compared
more
to Inside Out, which was like 96% or something.
Right, but
Like
but of course the tricky thing with that that article, well, not the article itself is completely fine, but I suppose with that analysis is that that women may have been on screen for more than 50% of the time in Frozen, but not necessarily saying lines. That's the tricky part, isn't it, in that analysis?
But is that any better?
Yeah, totally. Don't know. Good point. Don't know. Don't like Frozen either. Can Can I just say, I feel I should come clean. I'm not like a huge animal lover, and I don't really enjoy story. Like, I like animals, don't get me wrong, and I would never intentionally harm any, but I don't really enjoy stories that are all about animals being animals. And Zootopia, I realised, is all about animals, but it's about animals being quite human.
Yeah.
And they wear clothes. And one of the most delightful scenes for me is where they go into the naturist colony, and they're appalled because of all these animals who are naked.
So brilliant.
And
I
it's
choked
so
my
brilliant.
drink in that scene.
And yet, of course, the Jungle Book... No, well, and actually, there's a Freudian slip, because I didn't like the latest Jungle Book at all. Same sort of thing. It's animals being animals, but talking like, human voices.
Yeah, with human lip sync and everything.
Yes. But no. So that's my own personal prejudice, and I don't really enjoy that.
Do you know why?
Are you telling me?
No.
Do I know why? I wish I knew why.
Do you know why?
Yeah.
Because I've got something I can
Does
tell
it
you.
stem from
I've
my
got a little
childhood?
key that I can give you.
I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know. But I didn't like the children's voices in The Lion King. With their horrible little American voices.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas's Simba is
awful.
so whiny.
That's right, JTT.
And all the children animals in the Jungle Book, the new Jungle Book, sound exactly the same and just as annoying. We don't have any stupid children voices in Zootopia. So there you go. Ding! Another point.
To lead on to the next bit with characters as well.
Yeah.
I can totally understand why Scar would want to kill Simba when he's
Same.
like, my daddy's says I'm gonna roll it off.
Yeah. And plus, Scar is the single best character in that whole film.
Hands down.
Yeah. They should have just called it The Lion King's brother. Then it would have been a good film. Anyway. Yeah.
Agreed.
I was going to take us back to Zootopia, and let's talk about character. We're talking about Lion King characters. I've got written down there that Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde are it, really. I mean, there are some great characters around them, but they are the film. Like you're talking about not having any sidekicks, and they carry the film. There's enough in both of those characters to carry the film, and I thought they were both really interesting, well-formed characters. It's a buddy film, really. It's a buddy flick, and
they don't fall in love. Yay!
Yeah.
I really like that. I was like, I hope they don't do that. I really hope they don't do that. But yeah.
That was the only thing I really loved about, this is a really random tangent, but Dumb and Dumber 2.
This is a random tangent.
But they didn't fall in love with another woman. I was sure it was going to happen. And then it's so satisfying that they're still willing to just go, nah, we're stupid buddies. And we can't catch the girl.
I didn't mind that film. I knew exactly what I was
for some reason I didn't mind it as
Critics
well. So
hated
horrible,
it.
but it's a jokes and disasters.
It's one of those things where it's the same thing with Zoolander 2. It's like, I'm not really sure why they made this though. Like, there's no reason for this to have been made. But, yeah.
For some reason, I'm so much more against the idea of Zoolander 2. I've not seen it, but the previews look.
It just probably feels manipulative because it's basically money, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's we need to reboot a franchise if one
Right.
film can constitute one, and
And that's what I didn't feel about with Dumb and Dumber 2. The fact that they didn't get the girl for me felt like they'd held on to some kind of vestige of authenticity. We're gonna hold on to that integrity we have.
so different film, different market,
sorry.
obviously. Dumb and Dumber 2, but I am interested in why we feel that it's a better outcome if the boy and the girl don't wind up together at the end or whatever. Why is that?
Is it just simple cliche?
Well, I think it is, especially in Disney movies, which, oh my goodness.
And with a female lead.
I would say they're actually co-leads.
No, it's
No, I think
Judy's
it's Judy's
story.
It's, I don't know, I would maybe have to disagree with that a little bit. I think given the history of the project, basically, it was Nick was the main character for the longest time until I sent, basically a year away from release.
Really?
Six cuts of the film?
Yeah,
before they
completely rewrote
Really?
everything. Originally, it was going to be about predators wearing these shock collars, and then that's how the prey could survive with predators around, and he had to come to terms with that. I don't know. It felt to me a lot like what's another good example where there's the original protagonist, but then she needs to get over her kind of
Prejudices.
yeah, and then it kind of you start to see the Sedri, well, I guess the sidekick, become more of a protagonist as the movie goes along.
Right.
And so by the end, it's about both of them coming to terms with the same thing, except both based on their very different childhoods and their very different situations, and then working together as a team at the end. That was, I thought that was really satisfying in Zootopia.
Yeah.
Bias is the big buzzword around that film. I mean, I've written down in terms of how cinema landscape is that I think it's the most important film to come out in a long time, and that you're dealing with her bias, and that she's a bunny, which is a metaphor for being a woman, and then the bias, the racial bias. They sold that so well, and I was so impressed by that.
And it's so, I was hoping, and it's going to be a little while before I can test the 4-year-old, to say to her, what do you think the film was really about? I tried that actually as we came out of the cinema, and she said, it was about a bunny who wanted to be a police officer. I thought, forget it, all right, we won't go for the meta critique just yet, but we'll get there. But hopefully the whole kind of, you can be anything that you want to be, you have to work hard for it, don't let people stereotype you into a box. Don't make judgments about people based on blah blah, what they look like, what you know, so on and so forth. So many Beverly Hills 90210-ish messages, and yet all of them so contemporary and on point.
And also that you can actually make a difference. Albeit a small one, but with the parents and how they gradually change their mindset as well. It's wonderful.
That's right. Yeah, beautifully done.
And it's all nicely packaged up in a bigger theme that we can kind of all enjoy. If you're not into the criticising racism and you're not up with the cutting down on sexism, then it's kind of packaged into something that's more global, which is kind of the underdog, basically, getting over barriers to succeed in life in a job where you weren't supposed to be able to do it.
Yeah, nice, true. So
not that I identify with those people that.
It's a Trojan horse.
But you see what? So what? You know, I don't mean to slam good old Lion King, but what was the enduring message back in those days for the younger viewer?
Well, it's about leadership. I was really questioning that when I was watching it.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, ultimately, this is completely against the message of Zootopia, in that you're like, know your place.
Yes,
there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, that was.
But I was like,
part.
hang on, but is that because I'm just comparing these films? If I think about it, it's about a young boy wanting to rule everything and tell everyone what to do, and his dad being like, well, there's more to it than that. And then him having to grow up and mature and become a leader in a way that's takes responsibility. He effectively becomes a hippie, right? He goes off and like shirks all responsibility.
Arrested Development.
Puts everything behind him and goes and lives with this couple and Timon and Pumbaa, and has to learn how to reclaim what's rightfully his. So I mean, I had to think about that though. So I was
it's still a destiny movie where there's a person that was always destined to be the great one, who we identify with. We've got this innate power in us that we just need to open up to.
But he didn't have to work.
Still got your position in society,
right? But he's a bit like Prince William in a way. You know, he's born into it. This is what you're going to be. You could be like Prince Harry and go off nightclubbing for a bit if you want to. But when you come back, this is what we expect of you, and you don't have to prove it. And so it all felt a bit like, well, I don't really feel like this kid's earned it, and I'm not really invested in it. Do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
Yeah.
It is a very pro-monarchy film.
Yeah.
Especially the bit where they say, you know, oh, but what about the antelope? Don't we eat the antelope? And then there's some stupid like, oh, when our bodies dissolve into the ground.
Yeah.
It's like,
trickle down as well.
That's right.
I did think that the lack of female characters in Lion King is worth mentioning, and you've got Nala and Sarabi. And they're not really characters. Sarabi's not.
The only good thing I noticed is that Nala won the tussles. And I thought, oh, yay, 1994. Keep it up. But that was it, really, wasn't it?
She doesn't really do anything.
No.
She's just his love interest.
Yeah.
She comes and gets him, but does she? Because Rafiki kind of does it.
Yeah. It's, oh my gosh, the movie is so conservative. And I think every single one of the 90s Disney movies, they basically suffer from the same thing. It's very, very much about romanticism. And then the whole like message of The Lion King at the very end is by coming to his senses and reclaiming his rightful place. It's just, let's procreate and we'll settle
be
down,
fine.
have a heteronormative relationship.
yes.
Which, for the 1990s, that was very, very prevalent.
Yeah. There was a slightly awkward moment towards the end of The Lion King where Jeremy Irons, Scar, has got...
By the way, who names their kid Scar? I mean, particularly when they've got a scar across their face.
Yeah, it's pretty mean,
kind of
yes.
just pushing them in the ground.
And he's talking to Rowan Atkinson, who's in the cage, and Rowan Atkinson is singing Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen, which is a Negro spiritual. And Scar says, "Oh, could you stop singing that?" And so the little, what is he, a parrot? No, what is it?
Hornbill.
Yeah, the hornbill launches into It's a Small World After All, and he says, "No, you definitely stop, please, anything but that."
It's another one of those jokes.
Which is a nice little joke for the parents who are probably thinking, "Hell yes," But I thought, what an odd choice of the Negro spiritual. I didn't really. That kind of, that sort of slavery sort of. I don't understand why they chose that at all. But then,
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. Talking about character, for Lion King, I had Mufasa as a character I thought was worth mentioning. As the lovable dad, and they build him up and then chop him down, just like Bambi's mother for the generations before.
It's Bambi plus Shakespeare.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also worth mentioning Star Wars because I didn't realise as a kid that it was James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader, and it's so nice to hear him not sort of breathing heavily. But
he does say, did you catch the immortal line? "You are my son." He does. He says, "Simba, you are my son." He doesn't go, "I am your father," but he should have.
He's the ultimate father figure, isn't
Right.
he?
Yeah.
I mean, watching Lion King again, that was one of the things that really jumped out. Man, he sounds a lot like Darth Vader, just without all the voice stuff. He doesn't sound like the HBO guy. He sounds like Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
What's the HBO guy? I don't get it.
also, James Earl Jones.
Gotcha.
There's the HBO.
Oh, right.
I don't know. I struggled in both films a little bit to find characters that I really wanted to push for. I actually found the side characters more interesting in Zootopia.
Like who?
Like really, all the very funny characters: the sloth, the yak who was the nudist, of course.
Yeah.
With all the flies.
The fox that you mentioned earlier.
Gideon Grey.
Yeah, Gideon Grey. He's probably my favourite character in Zootopia.
I'm real sorry, Judy, that I thought of you like that.
He's great. His transformation is our little heartwarming moment.
Yeah.
But from The Lion King, I don't know. Nobody jumps out at me that I was like, I find you amazing. Simba's disastrous, painful to listen to.
Even as an adult, like Matthew Broderick, he's so milquetoast and hey guys,
Your milquetoast is
Simba.
so right.
Why do we identify with these types of characters? Because it does happen a lot. You see them in these kind of weak protagonists in a lot of films. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter.
Yeah.
What is
Hang
the
on,
attraction?
calm down. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's perhaps a character that is a void that we can put ourselves into, because so often the side characters are the most interesting because we don't have to relate to them. Like you have the case of Jack Sparrow becoming the protagonist in Pirates of the Caribbean 4, which I still love because I will love any Pirates movies regardless of how bad it is. But him as the protagonist, it doesn't really work because he's always been that throw cares to the wind, and they try and humanise him. And the same thing with the bloody Minions. And I haven't seen the Minions film, but I could see that a mile off. It's like you don't take the Minions that were great side characters and then try and make them
Make a movie out
central
of them.
figures because that's not how those characters function. So I think that's part of the reason why. But however, having said that, Judy Hopps is awesome. I think because she is so flawed. Well, not so flawed. She is flawed, and she has to work through that journey.
She has to work for it. Whereas back in the day with Simba, we somehow identify with him just because he's that character that has the essence that's going to be. He's going to become powerful no matter what, and that's what must be what we want to think happens to us. You can see yourself many flaws, as most people do, and they look at this character and go, "He's flawed, but he gets the easy run." Maybe that'll happen to me at some point.
At some point, Clinton's 90s,
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good point. The 90s. I mean, this is probably where we can start to talk about the landscape.
In context, sure.
1990s, we're in a much better, safer place in some ways, although it probably
Yeah.
didn't feel like it back then, than we are today. Suddenly we're cynical, we're thinking about real life. Back then in the 90s we're thinking about myths and the savannah, and now we're thinking
And it was
about
all
the city.
exotic back then,
Yes,
perhaps.
yes.
Yeah.
And we were willing to go off into these beautiful musical places and be in fantasy space. Now we're using fantasy to return to the city and figure out what's going on here. What's behind the door? What's behind the city that's keeping me down?
Sure.
Well, I suppose we are, aren't we? Because if you look at the Disney, well, in terms of Disney animation studios, Wreck-It Ralph is in there in a city world, like it's in a computer, but it's very busy and very full on. And
Big Hero 6.
Big Hero
definitely.
6 is definitely about the city. Inside Out is all about San Francisco and living in the city. So that kind of urbanized reality is it's interesting. I had never made that connection.
No.
One thing I noticed with The Lion King is it's of an era where baddies were always British.
Oh, yes.
I thought Jeremy Irons was outstanding.
Can we talk more about that? Because Scar he makes the movie.
His voice work is incredible, isn't it? And somehow
He's
the
just
animation
incredible overall.
he is incredible, but the animation is beautifully done just for
Right.
that character.
He's so
And
slinky.
with, and
yes.
with his throwaway lines, like when he goes charmed and then slumps down, and it's like there are moments of absolute brilliance where he's not acting because he's not there, but it works. The character and the voice work just magnificently.
There's that scene during Be Prepared where he whips his hair back and be prepared for sensational news. And,
Yeah, he is
so
marvellous. Yeah.
The villains, though, are always interesting because they have to give them a reason to be villains.
Yes.
And so I always find they have more backstory. It's like in the Batman universe, all of the villains are far more interesting than Batman because they have to find these reasons to make them do what they're doing for you to believe it. They can't just be baddies. And so, all of the Disney villains are great. Like I love Ursula in Little Mermaid as the sea witch.
Yeah, and Jafar.
Jafar.
Yeah.
He's all right, but he's
fun. I
fun.
like it, Gaston.
in Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
Is there maybe a difference? And I know we're not spoilering Zootopia, but I felt as though throughout the film I didn't have a great handle on who the villain, in inverted commas, was, or indeed what villainy was going on. It seemed initially to me to be very much, it was a small movie, if you will, where it was about Judy Hopps and it was her overcoming prejudice against foxes and just sort of trying to fight crime, and obviously the crime itself grew bigger, and as she learned about it, we learned about it, and that's great. But it was interesting to me that there was no villain set up at the very beginning. There was no sort of archetypal Disney witch looking into a mirror or a looking glass and casting a spell at the beginning so that we sort of knew who are we up against here. Yep. Lion King, you flipping know straight off the bat. You're like, scene one, hello, I'll be your evil villain for the rest of the film.
His green eyes,
absolutely, and the snarky
mane.
comments and all that. And I don't think necessarily that's good or bad. It didn't occur to me in either viewings of Zootopia that, I don't really know what's going on and I wish I had a handle on it. But I think it's interesting.
It's a recent thing as well.
Yeah.
If you think about Big Hero 6, same thing.
Yeah,
Frozen,
that's true.
same thing.
Wreck-It Ralph,
I think-
same thing. But yeah, completely. That was a big point for me going into Zootopia, knowing that the directors were from from Wreck-It Ralph and from Tangled, both of which had this more modern sensibility. So I went into the movie kind of on the lookout for a secret villain, and to me that kind of ruined part of the bits that happened in Act 3 for me. Like, I do kind of miss the days when you could have a villain you could, root against and who was so snidely
And that you knew throughout the film where your allegiance lay, sort of thing.
for sure.
Right.
And I do agree that it feels very much in context of where we are as a society, post 9/11, post all of that stuff that happened in the early 2000s, where everyone is much more paranoid. There's this idea that the people at the top might not know what they're doing, or might be fooling or deluding the populace, and all of these movies draw on that. Whereas back in the good old 90s, very, very clear cut.
Yeah.
But I also think that I think what you just said then is absolutely right. I think it's part of that discussion. But I also think people are a little bit more sophisticated with their villains. That sure, there's a fun in knowing who the villain is, but
It's more fun probably not to.
Well, but I also think people aren't inherently bad. It's personal, obviously going to get down to philosophical views, but generally we're a lot more aware of diversity in this day and age, and that people that are just different or seem like they are bad when really actually something's going on behind
Wait, do you mean not all predators will hurt you and not all prey are good?
I learned
Jeremy?
something. I learned something from Zootopia.
Yeah.
Don't go reaching for that fox spray.
But I think we've moved beyond melodrama, and that we can accept the idea that that person's the villain and they're bad because they're just people are bad.
Well, the most obvious showing of that and the parallel between the two films is that the big bad guy is a lion, obviously, in Lion King, and then the big bad guy, or so-called big bad guy, in Zootopia is a lion. But it turns out it's not the lion, which is fantastic, just like directly, symbolically cutting off that shoot. But the plot structure shows these things that we're talking about, that you start off thinking that the fox is the bad guy, and then it kind of cuts that out, no, that was wrong. Or maybe it's the lion, no, it's not him. And then it kind of does move on from there as well. But that plot represents somehow the fact that we're constantly being diverted, I think, now, and we don't know really quite where to look for our...
You mean in real life?
Yeah,
I agree.
I think so. For our bad guy. I think philosophically you're right, Jeremy, that it's more philosophically true, that there aren't these bad people that control our lives or orchestrate us and do these negative things. But at the same time, for stories, it's so challenging if you don't have a clear-cut bad guy.
You look at Lion King, hyenas are bad.
Yes.
Hyenas are
well,
bad.
No, they laugh a lot. That's what I noticed.
Essentially bad as well, just purely
that is
bad.
purely bad,
Yeah.
whereas that's completely different to Zootopia.
Yeah.
In fact, I wonder if Lion King could be a film in the universe of Zootopia that they go and watch.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I loved some of the smaller messages in Zootopia, like when Judy Hopps arrives at the front desk in the police station, and that lovely leopard creature says, "Oh, you're so cute," and she says, "Actually, it's inappropriate for bunnies who aren't for people who aren't bunnies. Shouldn't use the word people, obviously, but for those who aren't bunnies to use the word cute. It's all right for us to call ourselves cute," and I thought that was just genius. And then. A little later on, small spoiler but not that bad, where he says, that lovely leopard says, "Oh, because I'm a predator, it's deemed inappropriate for me to be the first face that people see when they come into the organisation." And some of that stuff really hit, actually.
Yeah.
For me, it was all the biology stuff. You're
born this way.
You're born this way. There's something in biology that makes you more aggressive.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
I mean, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, that it feeds into that whole discussion around people of certain races being more tribal or more
the warrior gene.
The warrior gene rubbish.
And going savage, like these people
savage.
this kind of idea that people were like that they can be set off and become violent beings, and some people are violent and some people aren't.
Yeah.
And that links back into the whole idea of savages, going savage and the colonial referring to people...
Indigenous people.
As savages.
It is. It's so insidious, isn't it? Which is why Zootopia was just absolutely bloody marvellous.
That's why I think it is. It's probably the most important film. I want to say since Django Unchained, but I don't think it was as important to people as it was to me.
What, Django?
Yeah. But I can't think of a film that is talking to a very real issue in such a well-packaged way, to go back to what you're saying, Max. It's really impressive.
So accessible way.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more liberal and a lot less controversial than Django.
Yeah.
I don't even mean R18. I mean R18 ratings aside, but do you know what I mean? There's obviously he had controversy around who was allowed to use the N-word and blah blah blah. Whereas I don't really think any right-minded individual is going to come away from Zootopia and say, well, technically that was actually a little bit unfair towards prey or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
I'm really, really glad that there wasn't a conservative backlash towards Zootopia. Like, this is just, it's liberal indoctrination. That's didn't really seem to happen.
It's kind of too complicated, I think, in some ways. Like, I mean, it's not obviously the message is right in your face, but the plot weaves its way around so that it's kind of, I don't know, it just worked in really nicely.
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks for listening to our discussion about Zootopia and The Lion King. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you check us out in about a month's time where we look at another 2 movies, one current film and one retrospective, with some kind of connection in between, as we discuss cinema in context. Ka kite anō.